Hey, this is Josh BRAHM with Life Report. I want to do another listener mail video, especially since we haven't been getting Life Report episodes out lately. The reason for that is just because Grace, who does an excellent job editing the episodes, or the video editing and all that, publishing to YouTube, has been super busy the last month on our biggest fundraiser of the year. It kind of helps us fund things like Life Report. And so we've actually recorded a couple of episodes that you haven't seen yet, and hopefully we'll be getting those out sometime soon. In the meantime, I'm trying to get out some stuff like little listener mail videos, just so we're not completely not publishing anything. So in a sense, it gives me a chance it gives me a lot of motivation to start catching up on these emails. So this is an email from a while ago. So this is from Ashlyn. Thank you for your patience. This is a good question. She says, I think it's a she. I think Ashlyn's a she, right? I hope so. I'm really sorry if I'm wrong. But Ashlyn says, hey, Josh, a couple years ago, I got in an argument with a pro-choice person. Hope it wasn't an argument. I like the idea of dialogue more than argument, but anyway. I don't really remember most of it, but I do remember it came down to the issue of dependence. She was arguing that because the unborn are still dependent on the mother, they do not have the right to live. I said that a couple of centuries ago, before there was baby formula, a newborn was also dependent on the mother's body for nourishment. And even after that, for children dependent on their parents for food, shelter, and other stuff. She said yes, and that if a child is under 18, she believes the parents have the right to kill the child. I was like 14 and I didn't really know what to say, so I just stopped arguing. How should I have responded, or did I do the right thing by just leaving it at that? I know it was really extreme, so I really don't know what I should have done. That's a good question. It's like the person you're talking to had made kind of a standard argument that we actually hear the idea a lot, that abortion is morally ethical because for some relation to the dependency on the mother. And different pro-choice people mean different things when they say that, which is why usually, not as much in your case, but usually, I think pro-life people need to ask clarification questions when people bring up dependency, because they might be saying that the unborn is not a person, not a valuable human because it's dependent on mom. Or they might be not saying anything about whether the unborn is a person. They might be making a bodily rights or bodily autonomy claim. And you can make a bodily rights argument for abortion even while kind of conceding the ground on whether the unborn is a person or not, depending on how they make it. So we want to be careful not to straw man people and ask them what they mean. But what's interesting about the person in your situation was they went from this kind of typical pro-choice argument. You asked you kind of made a reductio ad absurdum question, which I think is a very good one. I think the idea it's kind of our first test. What about breastfeeding? It seems like breastfeeding, there's a lot of ways that we can use breastfeeding even in bodily rights arguments. We're going to be doing a lot more talking about that in the near future. So I'm not going to really get into that. But I like the direction you took. I have nothing nitpicky, to say. So you make your counter, and she jumps to this super extreme statement. It's not just the mother has the right to commit infanticide, which is rare enough. I mean, unless you're there's a few philosophers in the ivory towers, if you will, that will make that argument, like Michael Tooley and Peter Singer, but and then more recently Jubilini and Minerva from Australia. There's not very many people advocating infanticide, and when they do, it's like for the first month or two, sometimes just for like the first week or two. And then it's like at that point, gradually the child should, we shouldn't kill it anymore. Your person actually said something I've never heard someone say, at least to my face before. I'm not sure if I've even heard of this happening in any, I don't know if another pro-life person has ever told me that they talked to someone who believes that you gain the right to live at age 18. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's a certain, I'm really nice to pro-choice people, but that's a silly, ridiculous argument. And so what do you do when people make really ridiculous or extreme arguments? I think is a great question, and one that I don't see people talking about often enough. We usually kind of talk about, here's kind of the most common 10 or 15 pro-choice arguments, so we kind of talk about those, and it's really important, but sometimes we kind of forget, what about those people that make unusual arguments? So, in fact, I think I've got an entire tag on the Life Report site. If you click on any blog post, any of the entries at Life Report, on the bottom hand on the left side, or on your left, you'll see, there's a bunch of tags, and some of them are bigger text because there's more entries, and one of them is unusual pro-choice arguments, because I like the idea of talking about, in fact, I'm sure I'll tag this entry with unusual pro-choice arguments. This is unusual. So here's a few things. I would ask a few questions. I wouldn't stop there unless I was kind of stumped. And this actually does happen to me. This has happened to me a few times where I'm talking to someone, and I think it happens to everybody. You just kind of run out of steam. You just you just draw a blank creatively. And so I just practicing doing this a lot. And when you try to come up with some clarification questions or something. But I know there's a few times I've kind of allowed a conversation to die just because I didn't really know what to say to them. Sometimes because maybe they make a weird argument, but also a lot of times when people kind of have a certain tone, I kind of, sometimes I'm just I'm not going to pursue this one because they seem so angry about it that it just feels like this is going to be uncomfortable, or they don't seem to even want the dialogue, and I don't feel like pushing it. So I don't know if I've always made the right choice, but I understand what that's like. I would want, ideally, I would want to ask a couple of questions. And so, what comes to my mind is, okay, this right that parents have, allegedly, to kill their children until they're 18, where does that right come from? I mean, I'd probably say something like you're the only one on the planet right now that thinks this, or maybe not. It depends. You don't. Let me say this. You don't want to make fun of them, and you don't want to make light of their argument if you haven't gained the kind of rapport that you need to kind of have fun in the conversation. So, especially if this is online, don't make any jokes about it. All right. But if you're one-on-one with a person, you've been talking about it for a while, you've gained a little rapport. I might say try to find some way to lighten up the conversation a little bit, and while trying not to offend them. So I might just say, it doesn't prove that you're wrong. The fact that let's say at least 99% of people would say that human rights begin before age 17 or 18. You could be one of the few right ones, but I think you've got some burden of proof here. You're making a claim. You've got a burden of proof. So why do you think that? How did you come to that conclusion? Why did you pick age 18? Why are you drawing that line? Why is it wrong to kill 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds? What is it that's in theory, the person thinks it's way wrong to kill 19-year-olds. Why? Does it have to, do humans have this transcendent value and right to live? Or is it just this thing where our society is going to say that we shouldn't kill humans, because that would be chaos? Is that the idea? There's different views on kind of human value and human rights out there, and I think I'm going to want to find out where that person's coming from. Really understand, beyond just the surface statement, this assertion that parents should be able to kill all of their kids no matter how old they are until they leave the home at 18, or until they're 18, whatever. I want to know a lot more at that point. I'm going to want to kind of sit back and totally become the learner for a little while, the learner about this person's view, if this person has thought about this before. If this person isn't just making this up as he goes along or she goes along. If this person's thought about it and really confident and dogmatic and oh yeah, totally. If people really thought about this like I did, then they would come to the same conclusion. I'm going to fill me in, help me understand, where you're coming from. This is unusual. I'm interested. There's a way to communicate that without, coming across as a jerk or making fun of them. So find a way to do that. And I think there's a way to ask those kinds of questions or do that, take that strategy or tactic or whatever you want to call it, in a way that doesn't come across like you're a jerk or you're baiting them into a trap, ooh, go ahead, dig your own grave, that kind of thing. Go ahead and go for a while so I can really, beat you on this one. That's not, I think you can come across as truly inquisitive and interested, and I would be in a non-jerky way, like help me understand where you're coming from. The other thing I'll do is just point you to another resource. It's relatively recent. I think we put it out about 6 months ago. I went and did some advanced pro-life training, or just some kind of specialized pro-life training, and we recorded the audio of it, and I released some of the segments of it that were a little bit more unique or new. It wasn't all original material. I was sometimes using stuff from Steve Wagner and sometimes Christopher Kazor and Frank Beckwith and other people, and I was always kind of, as I went, I cited who I was referring to, and some of it was my material that I'd written for this event. But I spent like 10 minutes or something like that, talking about what do you do when people bite that bullet, when they bite the infanticide bullet. So I'm not going to rehash all that content. I want you to go watch that video or download that audio. There's both. Well, the video is just like a title screen with the audio, because I didn't bring a camera that day, so it's just the audio. So listen to that. I may one day go and refine the content a little bit, and maybe do that again somewhere. Maybe we'll do it in a life report. But basically, it comes down to, I think there's certain clarification questions that you can ask when people in general say that they think infanticide should be legal or is morally okay. So I listed or named off, okay, here's a couple of clarification questions that I would use. I also named some reductio ad absurdum questions, some that you didn't use. So those are kind of, it's like these are tools to have in your toolbox. Doesn't mean this is the formula that you do all of these things with every person. It's just like, here's some things you can try. Here's some things, if you want 5 tools in your toolbox instead of 1, before you peter out, well, here's some things that you might consider using. I talked about something that I think Steve Wagner called the graphic picture strategy. It's this idea of really trying to make sure that they're really visualizing and contemplating with their conscience what exactly they're talking about. It's kind of a form of reductio ad absurdum, but it's like you're not just taking the roof off of their argument. It's like this entire idea, like what would society look like this? So I talked a little bit about that. I talked about Don Marcos's future like ours argument. That there's a way you probably could have tweaked Marcos's argument and used that. Do 19-year-olds have the right to live because they have a future like ours? And then I would probably just step back. Well, then why don't 17-year-olds also have a future like ours? Why don't 10-year-olds have a future like ours, and work them back? I think there's a lot of use with that pro-life people could be using with Don Marcos's argument. So that would be one thing. And then I also talked about discussing kind of deeper worldview questions a little bit, and I already kind of mentioned that earlier. Where is this coming from? Kind of just getting deeper. Sometimes you got to go deeper than the abortion issue itself, or even infanticide, and go down to kind of deeper worldview questions. So I talked a little bit about that. So check that out. I think that would be helpful to you. I just don't want to rehash it all because we've already got it out, and then you would be listening to me rehash it and then probably still going back and watching that. So just go watch that, and I hope that was helpful. Thanks, Ashlyn.